It's something you've likely encountered, whether maybe you did it or you saw someone else doing it or just heard the whispers. Academic dishonesty,
Hmm.
from like sneaking a peek during a test to, well, outright plagiarism. It feels like this worry has been around in education forever.
It really has. A long, long time.
And you hear these reports, right, that maybe it's happening even more now,
Mhm.
especially with, all the online learning stuff.
Yeah, that's a big concern.
It really makes you wonder about what's actually driving it all, doesn't it?
It's definitely a persistent worry, and, it kind of strikes at the core of what education is supposed to be about, for you, for everyone.
Yeah.
When you really stop and think, academic dishonesty, it has some pretty serious knock-on effects.
Like what specifically?
Well, obviously, it messes with fairly assessing what people know. That's the big one.
Sure.
But it also gets in the way of, actually learning things. If someone just cheats their way through, did they really get it?
Good point. Probably not.
And then there's the damage to the reputation of the schools, the universities.
Hmm.
And maybe the most concerning thing, some research suggests that being dishonest academically could potentially link to similar behavior later in life.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, figuring out what makes students do this. It's important for all of us, really, whether you're in education yourself or just, part of society.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're not just going to like throw our hands up and say cheating happens.
Right.
We want to try and understand why. What actually pushes a student towards academic dishonesty? And we've got this really interesting analysis, a meta-analysis, right?
That's right. A big one.
Looking at tons of research through this lens called the achievement goal approach.
Yep.
And what's cool here is it's not really about fixed personality traits like, oh, that person's just dishonest. It's more about what you as a student are trying to achieve
Exactly. What are your goals in that academic setting?
and how that connects to whether you might cheat, which suggests these motivations could maybe change.
That's the hope, yeah. The achievement goal approach is, well, it's a useful framework because it focuses right on what students are aiming for.
Okay.
And this meta-analysis we're digging into, it pulled together results from just loads of different studies.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a huge amount of data, tons of people,
Mm-hmm.
and it really helps us see the patterns. The researchers mainly focused on a few key types of goals students might have.
Okay, let's break those down. First up, mastery goals. What's the core idea there?
Mastery goals are, well, they're all about learning just because you want to learn. You're focused on improving, on understanding things more deeply.
Right.
So if you have strong mastery goals, you measure your success against yourself, basically. How much have you improved? How well did you tackle that challenge?
Okay, so it's not about beating others.
Exactly. It's not about comparing yourself to classmates. It's about your own personal growth, developing your competence.
So logically, if that's your drive, cheating kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Right. Precisely. It's self-defeating if your goal is genuine understanding. That's, a key idea for promoting integrity.
Makes total sense. So that focus is internal. Then you have performance goals. How are those different for you?
Performance goals, well, they're kind of the opposite in focus. They're very much about how you look to other people.
Aha, okay.
It's about demonstrating your competence, often
Yeah.
by, doing better than others in the class.
Right, getting the top grade, being seen as the smartest.
Exactly. Success is judged by that external comparison. Think about the student who really wants to ace the test, maybe not just to know the stuff, but specifically to have the highest score.
Gotcha. So the spotlight's external
Yeah.
on standing out. And you mentioned a third type, work avoidance goals.
Yes. Work avoidance, these are probably the easiest to grasp.
Okay.
They're basically centered on wanting to put in the least amount of effort possible.
Okay. Minimum input.
Pretty much. The main aim isn't really learning or even necessarily looking good. It's just getting by with the bare minimum.
All right, so you've got these three kind of core drivers. Wanting to learn mastery, wanting to impress performance, and wanting to do as little as possible work avoidance.
That's the framework.
So what was the main mission, then, of this deep dive into all that research? What were they trying to answer for you?
Well, the central goal was to really get a clearer picture of how these different achievement goals relate to the likelihood of you engaging in academic dishonesty.
Okay.
By looking at this huge collection of studies, they wanted to try and clear up some of the inconsistencies from past research and see, what are the overall patterns? How do these motivations really play out?
All right, let's get into the findings then. Starting with mastery goals. Like we said, it seems kind of obvious if you want to learn, cheating doesn't help. What did the big analysis show?
Well, that intuition seems to hold up pretty well. The meta-analysis found a statistically significant negative relationship.
Negative meaning more mastery goals, less dishonesty.
Exactly, both for mastery goals generally, and specifically for what they call mastery approach goals, that active striving to learn and improve.
Okay. And statistically significant just means it's probably not a fluke, right?
Right, it's unlikely to be just random chance.
Yeah.
So yeah, on average, students who are really focused on mastering the material are less likely to cheat. And interestingly, almost all the individual studies they looked at pointed in that same negative direction.
That seems pretty clear-cut then for that approach goal. But you mentioned mastery approach, and they also look at mastery avoidance. What's that? Trying not to misunderstand.
Yeah, precisely. Mastery avoidance is about focusing on avoiding misunderstanding or avoiding not being able to master a task,
Yeah.
sort of the flip side.
Okay. And did that connect to cheating?
Well, this one hasn't been studied nearly as much, but the meta-analysis actually found no significant link between mastery avoidance goals and academic dishonesty.
Interesting.
It seems like just being afraid of not getting it doesn't on its own push students towards or away from cheating based on the current evidence anyway.
So within mastery, it's really that active desire to learn that seems protective against dishonesty.
That seems to be the key finding, yes.
Now, the study also mentioned that the strength of this negative link for mastery approach, it wasn't identical across all the studies. They called it heterogeneity.
Right, good point. Heterogeneity just means there was variation. While the overall trend was definitely negative, more mastery, less cheating, the strength of that connection varied between studies.
So why might that be?
Well, the researchers suggested a few possibilities. One is that different types of cheating might relate differently.
Oh, okay. Like copying homework versus bringing notes into an exam.
Exactly. They cited one study, for example, that found a negative link with like active cheating, doing it yourself, but no real link when it came to helping someone else cheat.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. If your goal is your own learning, helping someone else cheat doesn't directly sabotage that, I guess.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Another interesting finding here was about age. The meta-analysis suggested this negative link, wanting to learn, relates to less cheating, might actually be weaker for university students compared to high school students.
Weaker in university. Why?
And even more surprising, based on very limited data, mind you, it might be non-existent for elementary school kids.
Really? Not existent in younger kids. Why would the connection weaken with age and maybe disappear for the youngest?
Well, a few ideas. For the really young students, maybe cheating just doesn't happen as much, or it looks very different, like, copying a neighbor's drawing, not complex exam fraud.
Right, different context.
As for why it might weaken in older students, perhaps the increased pressure, the higher stakes in college, maybe other factors start to creep in and sometimes override that natural link between wanting to learn and being honest.
Yeah, that intense pressure in higher ed could definitely complicate things.
No.
Okay, let's switch gears then. Performance goals.
Right.
The theory is wanting to look smart or beat others could push you towards cheating, right? As a shortcut to that goal.
That's the theoretical expectation, yes.
So what did the big analysis find here?
This is where things get, well, a lot muddier for you, for performance goals overall, and also for the specific types performance approach, wanting to do better than others, and performance avoidance, wanting to avoid looking bad. The meta-analysis found, on average, no statistically significant association with academic dishonesty.
Wow, no link. That's really surprising, given the theory. But you emphasized on average. So does that mean the individual studies were all over the map?
Exactly. That's the key. The researchers really highlighted this massive variation. Some studies found a positive link, some found a negative one, some found nothing.
Okay.
This inconsistency was a major puzzle, and they found a really crucial clue seems to lie in how academic dishonesty was actually measured in these studies.
Oh, the measurement method matters. Okay, tell me more. How so?
Well, take performance approach goals that drive to outperform others.
Okay.
When they looked only at studies that actually observed cheating, say in a controlled lab setting, those studies did tend to show a positive association. So wanting to outperform was linked to more observed cheating.
Right.
But when they looked at studies that just used self-reports, asking students, did you cheat? Or do you intend to cheat? Those studies generally didn't show a significant link.
Whoa, okay, that's a huge difference. So when you put them in a situation where they can cheat and they're focused on winning, they might be more likely to do it,
Seems that way.
but they might not admit it even anonymously, or maybe not even consciously plan it beforehand.
That's one interpretation, yeah. It's possible that the very desire to look good, which is part of performance goals, makes people less willing to admit to dishonest behavior, even on a survey. It's like trying to understand someone's real actions versus what they say they do could be different things.
Makes sense. What about the other side, performance avoidance, wanting to avoid looking dumb?
A slightly different pattern there, interestingly. For performance avoidance goals, they found that measures of intention to cheat.
Like, how likely are you to cheat in this situation?
Exactly. Those measures did show a positive association with academic dishonesty. So, wanting to avoid looking incompetent was linked to a greater intention to cheat.
Okay.
But again, self-reports of actual past cheating and the one single observational study they found for this goal type did not show a significant link.
So the fear of looking bad might make them think about cheating more or say they might cheat,
Right, it increases the inclination.
but maybe doesn't translate directly into actually doing it, or at least admitting to having done it in the ways researchers have measured it so far.
That seems to be what the current evidence points towards. It really underscores how much the way we measure dishonesty shapes the conclusions we draw, especially about these performance goals.
Yeah.
Just relying on asking people might really be missing a big piece of the puzzle, particularly for actual behavior or even just the inclination towards it.
This is really fascinating. It shows you can't just take self-reports at face value necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the third type? Work avoidance goals. Did the findings line up with the pretty straightforward idea that students trying to do less work would be more likely to take shortcuts, like cheating?
Yes, on this one the findings were clearer and matched the expectation. The meta-analysis found a statistically significant positive association between work avoidance goals and academic dishonesty.
So more focused on avoiding work, more likely to cheat.
That's what the data suggests. Students whose primary aim is to minimize effort do seem more prone to cheating as a way to achieve that goal.
Makes intuitive sense.
It's worth noting, though, this finding was based on fewer studies compared to mastery and performance goals.
Okay.
So while the link seems clear, more research would definitely help solidify it for you.
Still, it fits the picture. Cheating is often seen as a way to bypass the hard work. So just to quickly recap for you listening. Focusing on learning seems to curb cheating. Wanting to do the bare minimum seems to encourage it. And the whole wanting to look good or wanting to avoid looking bad piece, much more complicated, and really hinges on how you measure the cheating itself.
That sums it up nicely. And the researchers, they also looked into a bunch of other factors they thought might play a role, might moderate these relationships.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Things like, was it about your personal goals or was it about the classroom environment, like what the teacher emphasizes?
Okay, contexts.
Yeah. Or how specific were the questions? General cheating versus, say, cheating in math class.
Did that matter?
They even looked at whether the subject matched, like, math goals predicting math cheating. Also, how reliable the measurement tools were, whether it was a published journal article or maybe a dissertation, even the year it came out.
Did any of that stuff consistently change the picture?
Surprisingly, for the most part, no. None of those factors seemed to consistently explain the variations they saw, especially for performance goals. They didn't emerge as strong, consistent moderators across the board.
Oh, that's quite interesting. You might expect, say, classroom goal structures to have a big impact, or the specificity matching up.
You might think so, yeah. But the overall analysis didn't find strong, consistent evidence for those things, changing the fundamental relationships we've discussed. However, the researchers were quick to point out some important limitations and gaps in the research itself.
Right, methodological considerations. Let's talk about those.
Yeah.
What were the main takeaways there? Where do we need more work?
Well, one of the biggest points, which we've already touched on, is the heavy reliance on self-report measures.
Asking people if they cheat.
Exactly. And as we saw with performance goals, that can be really tricky. People might not be willing or even able accurately to report their own dishonest behavior.
Yep.
So they really stress the need for more studies using behavioral measures actually observing cheating, even if it's in a lab setting.
Definitely seems crucial to get a fuller picture, what you do versus what you say you do.
Absolutely. They also made a plea for researchers to just be more detailed in their published reports.
That was
Like providing the full list of questions they use to measure goals and dishonesty, being really clear about the time frame, like, did you cheat in the last year, last semester?
for better comparison across studies.
Exactly. That kind of transparency makes it much easier for future researchers and for meta-analyses like this one to synthesize the findings accurately.
Makes perfect sense.
Extra.
Better data in, better understanding out. Were there specific groups or situations that are under-researched?
Yes, a few key gaps. They noted there's very little research on the goals and dishonesty of educators themselves.
Hmm. Interesting. Faculty, administrators.
Yeah, they're part of the system too, face their own pressures. Also, they highlighted how little we know about very young students, elementary school level.
Right, you mentioned that potential lack of a link with mastery goals there.
Exactly. We need to look much more closely at what's happening with younger kids. Is cheating different? Are the motivations different?
Yeah, that early foundation seems critical. Anything else?
One other big one, social goals.
Social goals, like wanting to fit in.
Yeah, goals related to social relationships, getting along with peers, social competence. They pointed out there are basically no studies looking at how these might connect to academic dishonesty.
Wow. But that seems really relevant, doesn't it? Since a lot of cheating involves other people.
Hugely relevant. Think about collaborating illicitly on homework, sharing test answers, helping a friend. These all have a social component.
Right.
It's quite plausible that students with strong social goals, maybe wanting to maintain friendships or gain social status, might be more involved in those kinds of collaborative cheating situations.
That's a really great point for you to consider. We often frame cheating as this individual act, but the social dimension could be massive. Understanding those motivations seems like a really important missing piece.
Totally agree. It's a big gap waiting to be filled. So, okay, let's try and bring this all together for you, the listener. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into achievement goals and academic dishonesty?
Okay, well, it seems pretty clear that if your focus is genuinely on learning and understanding those mastery goals, you're generally less likely to cheat. That seems protective.
Right.
On the flip side, if your main goal is just to get by with minimal effort, the work avoidance goals, then yeah, you're probably more likely to cut corners and cheat.
Makes sense.
Now, the tricky one, wanting to perform well, either to look good or avoid looking bad, performance goals. Here, the link to cheating is much more complex. It really seems to depend heavily on how researchers are measuring dishonesty. Observing actual behavior might show a link, especially with wanting to outperform others.
Yeah, the performance approach linked to behavior.
Whereas just asking people about it might not capture that. And wanting to avoid looking bad might increase the thought of cheating, but maybe not always the action itself.
That's a really solid summary for you. And perhaps the big aha moment here is realizing just how much our definition of academic success matters.
You mean whether we define it as personal growth versus beating others?
Exactly, that definition, coupled with that basic human desire to maybe save effort sometimes. Those things can significantly influence academic integrity. And crucially, how we study dishonesty shapes what we think we know about it.
Right. So it leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? Consider the learning environments you're part of, or maybe ones you influence. How is success actually being defined there? How is competence framed? Is it all about grades and rankings, or is there space for genuine mastery and understanding?
Yeah.
Could shifting that focus, emphasizing learning for its own sake, actually foster a more honest culture? And, beyond these achievement goals we've talked about, what other motivations might be pushing people towards or away from academic dishonesty?
Yeah.
Definitely gives you food for thought to explore on your own.